Hey, what's up? It's Spaz the Magician, and welcome to the instructional video on how to take the counting system that people come up with in blackjack, apply it to the game, and then use it. In this video, I'll be going over step by step where the missing instructions are, what they're doing, and why it's a problem for people to understand. So a couple things I want to get out of the way before getting into the details of this video. First, people who make these systems or use them or teach them have been doing this for so long that unless somebody actually brings up what I'm about to bring up, they think that they're teaching it fine or there's nothing wrong with it, or they haven't run into the people who have been able to ask the proper questions, which is where I come in. Not to be cocky, but I do find things that are wrong with the way things are being taught, and I smooth them out, I figure them out, and then I represent them. So when you watch the instructional video that I'm going to give you here, and then compare it to what they teach, you will see everything I'm talking about is actually missing from these instructions, which causes people to get pissed off. Now, that's not the point of this video, but if people are going to ignore what I'm saying or say what I'm saying is not a problem despite me doing it, that's on them. But hopefully people will be able to take this video, give it to the people who are teaching the systems to realize you need to teach some of this different because what you're doing is still too confusing. That being said, let me get right into this video. So the first thing that needs to be gotten out of the way is they don't define words, definitions, or what they're talking about. Okay, these things are not explained, and you're somehow expected to know without being told anything, which I guess is part of the learning curve. But let me go over a couple of things here. Now, I've broken this deck up the way they have it into the plus and minus system. What I'm going to be going over in this only teaches you how to take the plus ones and minuses and the zeros and apply it to what you're doing to the game itself, meaning I'm going to connect the numbers to the deck. Now, I want to be clear. The people who do the instructional videos are doing that, but it is way too confusing for you to understand and get the concept on. So, the first thing I'm going to get out of the way, and that's a problem, is that none of these videos, no matter who's teaching it, explain what the value of the aces are. Okay, so first off, what I mean by this, when you're dealing with the count, this is all they tell you. Face cards are -1, the 8s, the 7s through 9s are 0, and then the 2s through 6s are +1. Which means nothing, because and then they start dealing stuff out and expect you to understand it. Let me back that up. First of all, the aces are the only ones that don't have a value assigned to them. Why? I still don't know that, so for purposes of this video, I'm not going to be using these because I don't know what these are for. I'd like to know that myself. You need to assign these a value as well, or at least put them in one of the piles. When these come up in a game, if you have values with these and not these, you're screwed right there. That's the first problem with this, so I don't understand how people miss that in any of the instructional videos, how to add or subtract the aces from the count. Next, there is a wording difference, and I want you to pay attention to this. Face cards are -1. 7s through 9s are 0s, and 2s through 6s are +1. Now, compare that statement to what I'm about to say now. Each face card, including the 10s, are each worth -1. So instead of saying these are -1, say each one of these are -1. The phrase each one and saying these are -1 takes on a completely different context. So anybody stating that you don't need to specify each one of these as -1, I'm sorry, is an idiot. That's what they're not explaining. So that would also apply to each one of these are 0. Each one of these are +1. So there are 20 of these. So there would be a literal, like this pie would be +20 if you were to take all the 20s and add them together. That's where the counting is coming from. Okay? So this system has two actual uses for it, which again, they don't go over in the video. Again, they only say, these are +1, these are 0, and these are -1, which doesn't help you. Each one of these, including the 10s, because 10s are not actually face cards, the 10s through kings, each one of them, and there's 16 of them. So you could get a total of -16 from this pile. A total of 0. And a total of +20 from this pile. Now, I will be using +2 as the example on this, because I've been using that in every other video. Now, when you have a +2, what that means is, and again, I'm going to use the wording difference here, because what you see in the video is they say, okay, the count's +2. That doesn't make any sense. They need to tell you why the count is +2, because this 2 is not defined. This system just tells you that there are 2 +1s on the table. Okay? So yes, each one of these are +1, but guess what? That's a +5, because I have 5 low cards here. Okay? But to say the count is +5 means nothing, because these 5 have no identifier. It's just a number 5. It would be like me saying 1 + 4 is 5. There's no identifying characteristics. It's just 1 + 4. Or, total of 5. So, I'm going to use the phrasing that needs to be applied here for you to understand where the count is being used from, or how you use this number, because this applies to the next part. If I say the count is +5, it is completely different than saying the count is +5 because these 5 low cards, since they're not just being assigned the value of getting +1, they actually are the +1. This individual card is not, the face is a code to get the +1. But when you turn them over in the back, you don't know what the faces are. That is because each one of these cards is a +1. So let me use the phrasing here, because I'm using this to show you how confusing this gets, because you're having a problem following what the hell I'm saying now. So instead of saying these are +1, each one of these are +1, each one of these are 0, and each one of these are -1, I'm going to deal them out in a fashion to explain it. This is +1 low card. I'm literally using the word low card. This is a second low card, aka +1. This is a third low card. This is 3, 4, forgetting about the plus, these are 4 low cards. So I hope you're starting to understand the way things are worded matter. Again, there's a difference between saying these are +1 and each one of these are +1. Now, how the math works on this is a little different, because this is where stuff gets messed up. So, if I have assigned 3 separate values to these piles, okay? +1, -1, +1, 0, and -1. What happens if you have this on the table? You have 3 actual separate values. You have a +1, you also have a value of a -1, and you also have a 0, which is usually a placeholder in math. The problem here is you're somehow expected to know without being told, because they told you, but they didn't tell you the way I'm going to explain it, so there's no way you can actually understand what they're saying in that regard unless they've explained this, which is, if you have a +1, and then you have a -1, and you have a 0, what's 0 + 1? 1. What's 0 - 1? It's -1. But if you have a 0 and you have this, what the hell does this become? Because you have an actual card on the table that is representing a +1. You have an actual card on the table that's representing -1. You can't have both values. So the system is designed to say, I have a +1 and I also have a -1. When it gets into this situation, the amount is 0 because you're adding +1 and then you're taking away +1. So this would be +1 and then you're taking away +1. So if I were to put them on top, representing this is the 0, +1 gets dealt out, and a -1 gets dealt out, which makes it equal. A +1 and -1 wind up being equal, okay? You don't, even though the cards themselves are still there, they are equal and they equalize each other. There isn't a +1 and a -1, there is now nothing. I know that sounds weird because you're looking at it as this value is a +1, this is a -1, so how can there be 0 if the two cards themselves are actually present if I just got done telling you that these are the actual, I've dealt one low card, I've dealt one high card. That is because the way they're using math here, forgetting about the system, this is the actual math. If you have $1, you have $1, and then you spend the dollar, you no longer have it. So you have $1, so you're ahead, which is you have a +$1. Then you spend that $1, you are now -$1. So you now have 0. That is the math that they're applying here. And that's why when you're watching these people deal these cards out, they're like, oh, this is +6. You're like, where the hell did they get the 6 from? That is because they dealt a total of 6. And this could be through 18 cards, meaning if you deal this, the count is +2, but if this comes up, the count's still +2, but if this comes up, the count is now +1 because one of these cancels itself out. This is still 0, so this doesn't even exist. So this turns into this. Even though these cards are still here, this is why this system is a pain in the ass to follow, because the counting is all screwed up. So what you have is +1, +1, a 0, and then a -1. Since this doesn't count and these cancel each other out, the count is +1. So, how does this apply to the deck? Now, I just explained to you that the plus count is a low card. Now, this is the deck, okay? The +1s have already been assigned, not just a way to get the +1, but they're actually correlate to the deck because the +1 is the card itself. Now, if I deal a low card out, there is one less low card in the deck now, but it's not looked at like that. It's kind of bizarre the way this system is. This one low card means that there's one less low card in the deck, which means I am now closer to a face card. Now, you obviously have no idea where these face cards are. You have no idea if one's coming up. That's not what the system is designed to do. It's not designed to tell you what the next card is. It's actually designed to tell you that there are now, because the low card has been dealt out, there's now more, the probability of you hitting a higher card becomes true. Now, if I were to deal this, there are now 2 low cards here, so the count is +2 low cards, which means the probability of me hitting a higher card is better now because I'm not running into 2 lower cards. These 2 low cards are no longer standing in the way or blocking me from hitting a higher card. Now, there's no way you have no idea what this card is, but you can kind of guesstimate that because there's less low cards in the deck, that the probability of you hitting a higher card the chance increases is what it comes down to. Now, if I were to deal this out, now there's 3 low cards out, and that means there's +3 here, which means there's more high cards in the deck now because the chances of me hitting a higher card is even better. So the whole system gets you to set up is to count how many low cards are actually out. You really don't even need to do the high cards, but this is what's called a high-low count. Meaning, the high count is outside the deck by lowering the amount of them in the deck, which increases your chances on getting a higher card because there are now less low cards, which allows you to run into a higher card more frequent. So, the higher this number is, the more likely you are to get a face card. Because if you remember, there's 20 of these cards. If there are 15 of the, if I've dealt 15 of these cards, let's see, I don't know how many are here. If I dealt this out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. 13, 14. 15. Okay, so let's say 15 low cards have gone through. All that's basically left in the deck now are nothing but aces, 10 through kings, and 5 low cards. That means if this was up on the table, you would not want to take a hit because there's so many high cards in here. The probability of me flipping up a high card is extremely high. Watch. I could use that as 1 or an 8, 1 or an 11 or 1, but it would be 16. But I guarantee you the next card I flip up is going to be a face card. So again, if there was this out, let's say even this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's only 20 lower cards like that you're assigning a +1 value to. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The count is +10. Even though there are only 10 10 low cards left in the deck, there are still 16 higher cards, which means this count is high, which means I would probably want to take this. I would not take a hit on. I would leave it because this count is so high that me flipping this over can most likely, not always, but most likely, I assume it is a face card, which it is. So I wouldn't have taken a bet on that, and I would have left it. So the whole point to this counting system is to get you to understand that when there's less low cards in the deck, that means the probability of you hitting a higher card becomes greater, which is when you want to increase your bets. So the problem people are trying to apply, how would you know that to the current bet if your cards are already out? You don't. That betting is for the next hand over. Now, what I want to talk about is running count. A running count, that definition of running count, is taken from all of the hands played because you don't just stop after one hand and reset the count. So, for example, if you did this, the count is +1. Oh, sorry, -1, which means there are the probability because now I'm playing with one less face card. So once I have to remember that the count is -1. The running count would be now the next hand. It's -2 now because there's 2 less cards in the deck. The 8s don't matter, so even though there's 4 cards left out, the count that I'm only concerned with is the face card, so it's -2. Now on the third count, I know the running count is -2. Now it's -3. This goes until the deck is reset. Now this is +1. So now, instead of -3, it's now -2. Since this is here, I would take a hit. I'd be over. But that's the risk you take because I'm guessing. But I wouldn't, increase my bet until I knew the count itself was higher. And the count itself is the discard pile. How many low and high cards are in there? Which basically, if there are 10 low cards in that pile, that means there's 10 less in the deck. That's why it's plus to minus. The higher this count is, the greater the chances of a face card. The lower this count is, the worse chance you're going to do, because you're not going to run into, because if the face cards are here, they can't be here. That is literally how the system applies. So, as I stated, as I explained, that the system for, sorry, let me get this out. The system for counting is one thing. But as I stated, unless I tell you that each individual, there's a wording difference. Saying these cards are -1 and these cards are +1 is completely different than saying each one of these cards are plus or minus. Now, that's only done to get you to understand how the system is put together. Now, I want to be clear that there's more to counting cards than just getting and understanding how the high and low count not only gets you numbers, but what the numbers represent, how they apply, and the instructions for using them. There are strategies involved that go along with this. You literally have to understand how to keep track of all these cards. Now, what would happen if you have 6 decks? Well, that principle applies, but the system only works if you know what the beginning count is. In other words, if you were already in the middle of a game and there was a bunch of discards, you wouldn't be able to use the system because you don't have any idea how many cards are in the discard pile unless you've been watching the game from start. So whether you're using 6 decks, 8 decks, 10 decks, whatever, that principle is the same. The higher this number is, the more chances you're going to have on hitting a face card, and that's when you make your bets for the next hand. So if there's 10 face cards, if there are 10 low cards out, I would increase my bet. It's just that simple. Now, where the other part of counting cards comes in is you have to know about the strategies. You have to know how all these blackjack hands are put together. You need to know about splitting. You need to know about should I take a hit on 16 on certain circumstances, when to double down, all of this stuff. There's also a secondary part that you can't learn by going through these videos. And that is, and as much as I hate to say this, these boot camps that teach you this stuff are done by people who have been in casinos, because what happens in a casino, you get distracted. The pit boss will come over, distract you, turn your seat around. They'll prevent you from looking at the cards on the table, which if you're going to do this, you have to keep track of every card that's been face up. And since everything's so fast, it's so hard to keep track of. So I just wanted to explain all that, hopefully help people out. And now that you understand that the system works the way it does, why it works, what the numbers mean, and everything else, you can see that the way I explain stuff is much different from the way they explain stuff. And hopefully the people will take this video and take it to heart and use it to help teach people. Because again, I'm just going to beat a dead horse with this. If I put you in if I plop you in the middle of a library and I say all red books are +1, all blue books are -1, and all green books are 0, there's a huge difference between saying that and saying each red book is +1, each blue book is -1, and each green book is 0. There's a complete differentiation on that. Now, if I say, okay, get me 2 green books, or, bring out 2 green books, I've specified what the 2 is, and you know what to go after, and you understand it, because I've correlated the actual number itself with the system to what you're applying the system to. Because again, it's very weirdly worded, and as you can see the confusion from that. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I hope this instruction helps you. If you have any questions, leave them underneath the video, and spread this video around, please, because these people are teaching stuff that is just, it's weird how they're doing it. And again, just because they think that there's nothing wrong with it doesn't mean that there is. Doesn't mean that there isn't. It just means it's never been brought to their attention, or the person that they were teaching it to that had a problem didn't understand how to phrase the question. But again, wording matters, definitions matter, and the lingo and how they're used should be being taught at the very beginning, and they should explain to you what the stuff represents before going into anything just the exact same way I did. So now that you understand the difference, and you understand how this works, this isn't going to make you a master, but it is giving you the basics of how the count itself is. I'd still like to know what the hell the aces are. So, that being said, Spasm Magician signing out. Have a good one.